So my name's John Keogh and I'm an obstetrician and gynaecologist at the San Hospital. And we thought we'd have a little chat today about miscarriage because it's one of those hidden realities in the community. A lot of people don't know anyone who's had a miscarriage until they have one. It's something that people don't talk about. So almost like until you've had a miscarriage, somehow you can't be trusted with that information. So what I often see when people have had a miscarriage is out of the woodwork. So many of their friends, family members, all of a sudden will come and say, yes, this happened to me, but they didn't know about that beforehand. But unfortunately, miscarriage is quite common. And we know that by the time you miss a period and have a positive pregnancy test, you're still talking about a 1 in 6 chance of miscarriage. So in a little way, it's a little bit like a roll of the dice. The incidence of miscarriage increases with age. So the younger you are, the less that risk. By the time you're getting up to 45, you've got a pretty much 50% chance of either a miscarriage or ectopic pregnancy occurring in any given pregnancy. Now, there are a lot of myths related to miscarriage, and part of that is about people wanting to provide some support and succor to people, but it's often really destructive. The things that people get told about miscarriage can be very destructive because whether you've had that baby that's gone through to term or whether you've had a miscarriage, you're a parent and you are, in the way of parents, trying to take responsibility for what happens to your children. So later on in parenthood, your child's getting bullied at school, you're going to say, where did I go wrong? Or they don't have a work ethic, you say, what did I do wrong? Or they're getting into bad relationships. So you're always taking responsibility for what happens to your children. Sometimes appropriately, sometimes inappropriately. Miscarriage is no different from that. So when people are going through a miscarriage, the first thing they do is they say to themselves, what did I do that caused this? And unfortunately, there's a whole group of people out there who are willing to say, well, don't you know, darling, you should never eat hot foods, get in the bath, have an argument, make love, lift something heavy, drive the car. And of course, there's always something you've done before you've had a miscarriage, so there's always something you wonder about. But in fact, miscarriages are one of those situations that are really almost always beyond our control. And the fate of that baby is usually written, as far as miscarriage is concerned, at the moment of conception. Because in the vast majority of miscarriages, the issue is, did the baby get the right complement of genes and chromosomes at the moment of conception that they needed? And the way I think of it is this: when you're making an egg or you're making a sperm, the cell that starts that has 46 chromosomes, but you can only hand on 23 to your baby. You can only hand on half because your partner's going to hand on half. But what half do you hand on? You don't want to hand on just what you got from your mother or just what you got from your father. You want your baby to have something of both sides of your heritage. So in the egg and in the sperm, you take the 23 chromosomes you got from your mum, the 23 you got from your dad, you bring them together like this and you say, right, I am going to make a unique set of chromosomes that never before existed, which now represents something of both sides of my heritage. So you take a block of genes from your dad's side and you put it over onto your mum's, and that is balanced by those exact same genes from your mum's coming over onto your dad's, and that's called crossing over. That's happening at multiple points down your chromosomes. You're exchanging material back and forward. At the end of that, you line them up like this, you split them apart, you throw away half. But this is now a unique blending of both sides of your heritage, which is why we're all different. This process is the thing that makes us all unique individuals. Now, what happens with miscarriage is a block of genes goes that way and nothing comes back. So when you split them apart and throw away half, you've now either handing onto your baby too little, or too much genetic material. These genes are the blueprints of how I make a baby. Eventually you get to that point where it's saying, oh, that material's missing. Or maybe there's a lethal gene on this side that's not been balanced by a normal gene on the other side. Or maybe I've got a doubled up copy of a lethal gene, which normally wouldn't have been there, but I've got it doubled up. So we all carry faulty information in our genes from one side, but that's balanced by the other one being able to make that protein normally. So the baby starts to develop, but it gets to that point where it's got missing, conflicting or damaged information, and it can't get past that point. So often you'll see, though, that the baby has passed away, but the mother's body is still nurturing it, still loving it, still looking after it. So the pregnancy goes on maybe for a few weeks, but you see that the baby passed away maybe 3 weeks ago, but the mother's body is still looking after it. So sometimes people feel that maybe their body has let them down, but it hasn't. You see this almost always, that the mother's body continues to nurture and nourish that pregnancy, desperately hoping that there might still be a way that things are going to be okay. And only in the end does it have to accept that this is not going to happen. There are a few things that can make miscarriage worse. We know that smoking can make miscarriage worse, but we're fortunate to live in a society where smoking is relatively rare now. When I was a young doctor, we asked how many people smoked, not if they smoked. It was extraordinary to get people who didn't smoke. But that's been a huge social change. And that's one of the things that's also reducing the risk of prematurity across the nation. There are rare conditions in the blood, autoimmune conditions, phospholipid antibody syndromes, some thyroid dysfunctions, sometimes shapes of the uterus with septums or things like that, that can be associated with miscarriage. But they're the small group over here. This big group is all about, did the baby get the right number of genes and chromosomes at the moment it was conceived?